Microsoft's Power Platform is a truly incredible set of tools. However, there comes a point as a low-code maker working with Microsoft 365 services where you just put your head in your hands with despair because you've happened upon an inconvenient reality. While Microsoft 365 and Power Automate might be from the same family of products, Power Automate is the distant cousin who you only see once a year and no one really gets along with. Now, don't get me wrong, I love using Power Automate. I think it's an amazing product, and every Microsoft 365 user should gain at least some familiarity with it. But the one big area where it truly shows huge weakness is the one that should be a big strength: its ability to truly automate the work of an end user in the whole range of Microsoft 365 products and services. So in this video, I want to outline 3 wishes that I have for how Microsoft might refocus some of the efforts it makes in developing the low-code extensibility options for its core set of products. I believe that these wishes represent changes that would add even greater value to Power Platform and to make the drive we are currently seeing to empowering every worker with low-code development more of a reality. Hey, thanks for watching. If you're enjoying this video and getting value from the content, please do drop it a like. And if you'd like to see content like this, then please subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so you know the next time I release a video. Also, if you think this content might be useful to your network, please do consider sharing it there. Thanks. But first, I do want to say there are routes around some of the friction points I'm going to outline already. However, where these routes involve RPA using Power Automate Desktop, I think it's still reasonable to seek a better option. With the recent licensing changes, see the link to this video below if you're interested. RPA technology is now much cheaper to deploy, but it does come with hurdles and a learning curve that a purely cloud-based experience does not. RPA is a great sledgehammer that can crack even the smallest annoying nut. But in this video, I want to focus on purely cloud-based experiences, as both Power Automate and Microsoft 365 call the cloud their home. Even pretty new makers can quickly run into problems when trying to do fairly basic things with Power Automate. And often this is due to weaknesses in the capabilities of the first-party connectors Microsoft provides for its own products. Take something like Forms, a tremendously popular product that I know lots of makers start out wanting to automate with. It literally has one action: to get a form response. According to Power Automate, there is nothing you can do with forms, such as creating or editing the forms themselves, despite it being a first-party app that is 100% web-based, meaning that anyone who can open DevTools on their browser can see that Power Automate could do anything in Forms an end user could using the UI. But it gets worse, because if we can't do something with an inbuilt action, we have the ability to build a custom connector to any product with a modern API. But have you tried to find documentation around the Forms API? You could just play with it in the Graph Explorer, right? Very wrong. Forms has its own API endpoint, modeled after the SharePoint REST API. But you go and try to find some official Microsoft documentation on it. I dare you. You'll be at it a very long time, as it doesn't seem to exist, at least not in the public domain. This pattern is repeated throughout Microsoft 365's apps and services. It's amazing that we get so much value in Microsoft 365 and that new features arrive so regularly that can help you boost your business productivity. But from the maker angle, the lag in getting access through Power Platform and the lack of effective documentation of these features' inner workings can be very frustrating. So here are my 3 wishes I want to share for how Microsoft can better align its work on Microsoft 365 and Power Platform to make the journey for makers, particularly newer makers, considerably more streamlined. If I can do it in the app, I want to be able to do it from Power Automate. Or more reasonably, if I can do it from the web app, I want to be able to do it in Power Automate. Why do I specify the web app? Well, if it's happening in the browser, it must be being done by Microsoft's various APIs and services into the Microsoft 365 tools. Whereas for a feature that is only present in Desktop Excel, for example, it's not as clear that this is something that's easily completed using a web-accessible endpoint. It's my wish that if we can do it in the app, we should be able to easily do the same thing with Power Automate. This might be something like attaching forms to virtual appointments or adding a question to a form. Both things we cannot currently do from Power Automate. But for every option or button that exists in one of Microsoft's web apps, there is definitely some kind of behind-the-scenes web transaction taking place. And I want Power Automate to be able to replicate all those transactions as a core part of Microsoft's ongoing development of these tools. Power Automate is already incredibly powerful, but providing this level of integration with Microsoft 365 would truly set Microsoft's low-code services on a different trajectory to any other platform. Anyone with Microsoft 365 knowledge would be able to understand fully how automation could support their work without any barriers. And with the inclusion of Copilot that allows natural language to turn into automations, every single user would be able to maximize their productivity in their unique workflows, depending wholly on Microsoft's tools. Microsoft, in my opinion, has some of the best documentation and learning materials available in the technology industry. And the amount of content they make available for free to promote learning across its product range is, I think, one of the keys to their success. But have you spent much time looking through Microsoft's connector documentation or the associated features you might want to use in the Graph API? There is, in my opinion, a very clear distinction between the robustness and accessibility of this sort of technical documentation and that which is part of services like Microsoft Learn that initially support users to start learning about tools like Power Automate. If you're a new maker, perhaps you just completed the PL900 training or one of Microsoft's virtual training days focused on Power Platform, you might start by thinking about automating something you already do with Microsoft Forms. You open Power Automate, you find the only action for the Forms connector is to get a response. Perhaps you want to create a new form or get all the responses or something else that's totally logical based on your understanding of Forms and Power Automate. So where do you head? As you can see, the connector reference doesn't provide much help. It doesn't even give you a clear idea of what information you'll get back and in what format from the limited things the connector can do. Now, as I already said, Microsoft Learn and Microsoft's technical resources generally are great. I find myself on the Microsoft Learn website almost every day, and much of what I've learned about Power Platform has come from these resources. But in this specific area, I think there is a big gap between the resources that would be the most helpful to the community and what is published. These low-code technologies are sold as a resource useful to anyone, but they are documented like niche tools only accessible to tech nerds who like poking around under the hood. When Forms response editing was released a few months ago, it opened some really interesting capabilities in a product that so many organisations already utilise as a base for automation. But as I highlighted in this video here, which is linked below, it was implemented in a way that could effectively break existing automations with no apparent way through either Microsoft's connector or through back-end API access to remediate that issue. In previous videos, I've shown how when working with features like Teams webinars or Microsoft bookings or shifts, there are certain deficiencies that really limit your ability to replicate what can happen manually in the UI with Power Automate or to gather data related to those actions. A great example of this is the ability to push out forms with bookings using virtual appointments, but there is nowhere where the data associated with this form linkage, the URL connected with it, etc., is present in the data you can pull from Graph. In Graph, there is no connected form, and Microsoft has clearly bootstrapped some wizardry in the background. The pace of Microsoft 365 development is a whirlwind, and many new features are very exciting for tech enthusiasts like me, with many being very useful to clients I work with. However, if low-code development of connected tools is to be regarded as a mainstream experience, a little less haste is maybe needed in some of these feature launches, and a bit better explanation of how they work and how to work with them is needed. With all the buzz around Microsoft 365 Copilot in recent months, the immense power of the Microsoft Graph has come into full view. This is the backbone of any app being able to know you as a Microsoft 365 user. But with this great power should come the expectation that every aspect of Microsoft 365 data should be stored in and documented within the context of the graph. So those are my 3 wishes of areas where Microsoft could really boost its support of Power Platform and Power Automate specifically. It's important to note that in comparison to any other technology out there, Microsoft is already leaps ahead with Power Automate. The ability to integrate across a suite of productivity tools, the licensing options including the inclusion of Power Platform resources in most Microsoft 365 licenses, and the protection of your data and resources all inside your tenant, makes Power Platform the most competent low-code platform and Microsoft 365 the most competent productivity suite. However, while continuing to innovate and pushing forward, it's important that Microsoft eventually starts to consider how to fill these gaps so that all makers, whether those starting out or experts, can access the resources, documentation and capabilities to turn their imaginings into reality using low code. What do you think? What are the barriers you see in your Power Automate work? And what are your 3 wishes for Microsoft? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching the video. I hope this was useful to you. Until the next one, bye bye.